6 miles in the rain. A single mother walked 6 miles through pouring rain to get to the most important audition of her life. A CEO sat in his car and watched her walk every single step of the way. He didn't stop. He didn't send anyone to help. He did nothing at all. He just watched. She didn't know he was there. She didn't know the audition she was walking toward was for his company. And she didn't know that when she stepped through that door, soaking wet, trembling, she would force him to confront a truth about himself he had been running from for 20 years. After that day, neither of them would ever be the same again. Taraji grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood people used to say had more dreams than opportunities. She studied at Howard University, worked as a secretary in the mornings, performed as a singing waitress on a dinner cruise boat in the evenings, and fit acting classes into whatever hours were left. In her junior year, she found out she was pregnant. Some people said that was the end of the road. Taraji didn't see it that way. She graduated. She carried her 4-year-old son Marcus onto a plane to Los Angeles one October afternoon in 1999. She had less than $300 in her wallet, and in her heart something no one could put a price on. The next 2 years were a stretch of days that she would never allow herself to forget, even after she'd made it. Background roles with no lines. Casting calls where the director would glance at her, look back down at her file and say, "We'll be in touch." They never were. Marcus grew up in a rented room in Compton, sleeping on a mattress laid flat on the floor, holding a stuffed rabbit named Biscuit. Ears gone limp from too many washes, sleeping soundly as though the world had nothing to worry about. Every night, Taraji would watch him sleep and tell herself, just one more day, just one more time. On a November morning in 2001, her phone rang at 6:15. The office of Riverside Pictures, a rising independent film company in Los Angeles, was calling to confirm a 9 o'clock audition. The female lead in their second production, a single mother who rises above adversity. Small budget, but a director with a real name. If the film got distribution and people noticed, this was the turning point. Taraji knew that. Studio knew that. And so did more than 20 other actresses. She set the phone down and looked out the window. The November sky over Los Angeles was coming down hard, not the gentle kind. This was what the weather service called rare severity. Relentless, bone cold, sheets of rain that didn't let up. She opened the rideshare app. Line 204, the only bus running from Compton to Culver City, where Riverside Pictures was based, had been suspended due to local flooding. Cab fare, $28. Account balance, $11.70. Taraji stared at her phone screen for 10 seconds. Then she closed the app. She went to the kitchen. She made Marcus a sandwich, added apple slices and a juice box. She wrote on a yellow sticky note, "You are Mama's brightest star. I love you more than the whole sky." She pressed it onto his lunchbox. Then she went to Marcus's room. He was lying on his side, arms around Biscuit, curly hair tangled the way it always was. Taraji knelt beside the bed. She just looked at him for a long moment. She stood, pulled the blanket up over his shoulders, and walked out. She put on her burgundy blazer, bought at a thrift store 4 years ago, washed and ironed so many times the fabric had begun to shine at the elbows. Black slacks. Black heels, carried in hand, tied to her wrist by their straps. On her feet, a pair of old sneakers. Her portfolio, headshots, acting résumé, 2 letters of recommendation, she sealed inside a Ziploc bag and tucked into a knotted plastic grocery bag. Then she pressed that plastic bag against her chest. She looked up at the sky once, not out of surprise, just to understand what she was walking into. Then she turned left and started walking. Raymond Cole's car was parked 2 blocks away. Raymond Cole was 50 years old, CEO of Riverside Pictures. Not the kind of name people thought of when they pictured Hollywood. Not the kind who wore sunglasses at press junkets. Not the kind who ended up on magazine covers. Raymond was the man who sat on the other side of the table and decided who got to stand in front of the camera, and he never made that decision lightly. 15 years earlier, his closest partner, the co-founder of the company, the man he called his brother, had quietly walked away from their contract right before their first film was set to release, taking the entire distribution rights to a competing studio, without a word of warning, without a word of explanation. Raymond rebuilt from nothing, and he learned something he repeated in every casting meeting, every executive session. Words are air, behavior is truth. That was why he was sitting in a black Cadillac Escalade at 6:45 in the morning, parked on Avalon Boulevard, going through the final candidates list. That was why he asked his assistant to pull the home address of every finalist before every major casting decision. He wanted to see them when no one was watching, when they didn't know they were being evaluated. His driver, a man named Douglas, had worked with him for 9 years. Douglas knew when to speak and when to stay quiet. This morning, he stayed quiet. Raymond looked down at the last file in the stack. Taraji, 27 years old, theater arts degree from Howard University, 4-year-old son, no talent agent, no significant leading roles, address, a rented apartment in Compton. On paper, she was the weakest candidate, 1840 Avalon Boulevard, apartment 2C. Turn left, Raymond said. Douglas started the engine. The rain came down harder. They spotted her at 6:52. A young woman stepped out of a red brick building, paused for a moment under a narrow overhang, and looked up at the sky. No umbrella, burgundy blazer, heels in hand, sneakers on her feet, once white, now gray. Her left arm pressed a plastic bag tight against her chest. She turned right and started walking. No car, no one beside her, just a woman alone in the rain moving west. Raymond said nothing. He counted to 10 in his head, the habit he kept whenever something important needed deciding. Follow her, he said. Keep your distance. Don't let her see us. Douglas glanced in the rearview mirror. 9 years, he had never heard Raymond give an order like that before a casting session. But he didn't ask. The car moved forward. November rain in Los Angeles doesn't behave like rain anywhere else. It isn't dramatic, no thunder, no lightning. It just falls, steady, cold, stubborn, as though it has no interest in whoever or whatever is happening below it. Taraji felt every drop. The rain soaked through her blazer in under 3 minutes. The fabric pressed flat against her shoulders, cold and heavy like a wet blanket draped over wire. Her sneakers began absorbing water from the first mile, each step producing a soft, squelching sound she couldn't silence no matter how carefully she placed her feet. But her hand stayed locked around the plastic bag. Inside the Ziploc, the portfolio was still dry. Headshots, résumé, reference letters, all of it untouched. That was the math she lived by. The body could get wet, the documents could not. She passed a gas station on Figueroa. A man was sprinting from his car to the door, a folded newspaper over his head, cursing at the weather. She passed a laundromat, still dark inside, chairs stacked on tables, closed. She passed a church parking lot where puddles had grown deep enough to erase the painted lines entirely. In this entire sprawling city, on all these streets, she was the only wascone the rain. She was the only person walking in the rain. She knew that. And she kept walking. At the second mile, a silver SUV came through the right lane too fast, its tires hitting a massive puddle at the curb. A wall of dirty water rose and collapsed over her from the waist down. Cold, dark, the grit of street runoff. Taraji stopped. 3 seconds. Eyes shut. Hands tightening on the bag. Rain hammering her face. The voice inside her head, the one she knew better than any sound, spoke up. Stop. Just stop. Go home. There will be another audition. There will never be another audition like this. 3 seconds. Then she opened her eyes. She pulled the knot of the bag open just enough to check the Ziploc inside. Dry. Completely dry. The portfolio was fine. She retied the bag, shifted it back against her chest and started walking again. If I stop, nothing changes. If I keep going, maybe everything does. 1 sentence. Every step. If I stop, nothing changes. 2 blocks behind her, Raymond Cole sat motionless in the back seat of the Escalade. His coffee had gone cold. His phone had buzzed 16 times. He hadn't touched either. She's still walking, he said. The words came out quieter than he intended. Douglas said nothing. Sir, Douglas said after a moment, she's completely soaked. It's 34 degrees out. Should we? No. The word landed hard and clean. Raymond kept his eyes on the figure ahead. She doesn't know she's being watched. That's the point. When there's an audience, people perform. When there's no one, no reward, no audience, that's when you see the truth. Right now, I'm seeing the purest form of it I've ever seen. But Douglas had planted something uncomfortable beneath Raymond's ribs. A splinter he couldn't reach. He was testing her. Fine. He tested everyone. But none of them had ever been walking 6 miles in the rain. None of them had ever been this backed into a corner with no other way out. And for the first time in a long while, Raymond Cole realized that the test he had designed for someone else was also testing him. She could get sick, Douglas said, not looking in the mirror this time, just watching the road ahead. Pneumonia. Hypothermia. She's not dressed for this. Raymond knew that. I know, he said. Then why are we still following her? The honest answer was not one Raymond was ready to say out loud. Because she fascinated him. Because her refusal to stop contradicted everything he had come to expect from people. Because in 30 years of hiring and firing and observing, he had never once seen someone choose suffering over surrender with this kind of quiet, unperformative resolve. And because it cost him nothing. He was warm. She was not. Because he was dry. She was not. He was watching her pain from behind heated leather and tinted glass, and some part of him, buried deep beneath the suits and the empire and the philosophy about words being worthless, knew that his inaction was its own kind of test. Not of her, of him, and he was failing it. At mile 4, Taraji's phone buzzed in her back pocket. She found a narrow metal awning above a closed barber shop. She pressed her back against the locked door and answered. The caller ID read, Mrs. Celestine. Mrs. Celestine Adeyemi, 62 years old, retired, 2 doors down. The woman who had appeared at Taraji's door 3 months ago and said, Bring Marcushians to me every morning, I'll watch him, Mo. No money asked for. Hello, Mrs. Celestine? It's me, baby. Marcus is having breakfast. He wants to talk to you. A rustling sound, bright and clear, untouched by the cold math of poverty that governed every other part of Taraji's morning. That governed every other part. Mama, Taraji closed her eyes. Hey, baby. Mama, is it raining? She looked out at the street. Water poured from gutters in thick streams. A trash can had been knocked over by the wind. The sky was so dark, it looked like evening, though it was barely past 7. Just a little, Taraji said. Her voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it. Did you bring your umbrella? Taraji pressed her lips together, swallowed once, then again. I brought it, baby. Don't worry. Are you going to get the part, Mama? I'm going to try my very best. I wrote you a note. Did you bring it? Taraji's free hand moved to the left pocket of her blazer. Through the wet fabric, she felt the small folded square of paper. Still there, still warm from her body heat, the only dry thing on her besides the dots in the bag. Marcus had written it in purple crayon, letters still shaky and uncertain. Mama, you can do it. I love you. I brought it, she whispered. I always bring it. Good. Because you can do it, Mama. I wrote it so you'd remember. I remember, baby, every single day. Okay. I love you more than the whole sky. Taraji opened her mouth. No sound came for 2 full seconds. Then, softly, like a prayer spoken to no one and everyone at once. I love you more than the whole sky and every star in it. The call ended. She stood under that metal awning for 5 more seconds. Rain or tears. It didn't matter which. The result was the same, wet skin, burning eyes, and a reason to keep walking that no storm on earth could wash away. She tucked the phone away, shifted the bag back to both arms, stepped into the rain, and walked faster than before. 2 blocks behind, Raymond Sterling sat perfectly still. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on his knees. Douglas glanced in the rearview mirror. 9 years of driving Raymond Cole through mergers and lawsuits and funerals and celebrations. He had seen many things on his employer's face. Anger, calculation, control, satisfaction, boredom. He had never once seen confusion. That is exactly what he saw now. Confusion. And beneath it, something Douglas couldn't quite name. Something that looked, if he had to guess, like the first crack in a wall that had been standing for a very long time. A memory surfaced in Raymond's mind. Uninvited, unwelcome, 30 years buried, and suddenly there. His mother, Dorothea Cole, 1981. He was 9 years old. She worked the overnight shift at a community hospital on Vermont Avenue, 11 miles from home. That year, her car blew the transmission and there was no money to fix it right away. No bus ran that route after 10 at night. Raymond didn't remember all of it, but he remembered the shoes. Her white shoes by the front door every morning, soles soaked through, toes starting to peel, and her work shoes already dry beside them, already ready for the next shift. She never told him she'd walked. He'd figured it out years later, doing the math in his head. No late-night bus, no cab company that served that part of town, nobody else to call. Just 11 miles in the dark of night, because a woman named Dorothea Cole did not confuse difficulty with impossibility. Raymond had not thought about those shoes in 20 years. He was thinking about them now. Outside the windshield, Taraji was approaching the business district. Less than a mile to go, her pace hadn't slowed. If anything, she was walking faster. Back straight, arms locked around the plastic bag. She looked like a woman marching into battle, carrying nothing but the decision to show up. "Douglas," Raymond said. His voice was different, quieter. "When she gets to the building, call Simone at reception. Tell her to have a cup of coffee ready. Hot, no sugar. Give it to the woman who walks in wet." He paused. "Don't say it's from me. Don't say anything. Just give her the coffee." Douglas looked in the rearview mirror for a long moment. 9 years. This was the first time he had seen Raymond Cole give something away without calculating what he'd get back. "Yes, sir." That was all. No grand gesture, no revelation. Just a cup of coffee ordered quietly from the back of a luxury car for a woman who would never know where it came from. And it was the first thing Raymond Cole had given anyone in 8 years without expecting anything in return. That terrified him more than he wanted to admit. The Riverside Pictures building rose 10 stories of glass and steel against the gray Los Angeles skyline on Washington Boulevard in Culver City. Taraji had spotted it from 3 blocks away. She had looked it up on her phone the night before, memorizing the address, studying the exterior on Google Street View, so she wouldn't hesitate at the entrance, wouldn't look lost, wouldn't give anyone a reason to doubt she belonged there. She didn't belong there. She knew that, but she was here. And being here was enough for now. 6 miles. 1 hour and 43 minutes. Her phone showed 14,200 steps. She didn't need the number. Her body already knew. Every muscle was keeping its own account, but she was on time. 8:54. 6 minutes early. She pushed through the revolving door, and the building's warmth hit her like a wall. 72 degrees of climate-controlled air wrapping around her soaked body with a gentleness that nearly buckled her knees. Marble floors, high ceilings, a large framed photograph on the wall behind the reception desk, a silver-haired man in a dark suit looking straight into the lens with eyes that gave nothing away. She didn't look at it long. She had somewhere to be first. The restroom was on the ground floor, 3rd door past the elevator bank. She walked quickly, leaving wet footprints on the marble, hoping no one noticed. The door closed behind her. For the first time in nearly 2 hours, she was alone in a room with 4 walls and a ceiling and a mirror. She set the plastic bag on the counter, opened it, pulled out the ziplock, ran her fingers along the sealed edge. Dry, everything inside, perfectly dry. Headshots, letters, documents, all of it untouched. She exhaled, a long, trembling breath that carried the weight of 6 miles. Then she went to work. She pulled off her sneakers, stuffed them into the plastic bag, slipped on the black heels she'd carried the whole way. They were dry. They fit. She stood 2 inches taller, and something in her posture shifted immediately, as though the shoes remembered a version of her she was still working to get back to. She took off the blazer, held it over the sink, and wrung it with both hands. Water poured out in a steady stream. She wrung it again and again until it went from dripping to damp. She put it back on, pulled the lapels straight, smoothed the shoulders with her palms. Her hair was plastered to her head. She finger-combed it back, pulling it into the tightest low bun she could manage without an elastic. Found a single bobby pin in her pocket. Secured it, not elegant, but neat. Controlled. She looked in the mirror. A woman looked back, eyes reddened from the cold wind, skin pale from exhaustion and low blood sugar, blazer still darker at the shoulders where moisture clung, but posture straight, chin level, gaze steady. Not perfect, not even close, but ready. She reached into the left blazer pocket, pulled out the small folded square of lined notebook paper, purple crayon, the letters still a little uneven. She read it once. Slowly, like a prayer she had memorized but needed to hear again anyway. "Mama, you can do it. I love you." She folded it back along the same creases, placed it in the breast pocket of her blazer, left side, over her heart. Then she picked up the Ziploc bag, squared her shoulders, and walked out. The waiting room on the 3rd floor of Riverside Pictures had 12-foot ceilings, gray carpet so clean it looked painted, leather chairs that whispered money when you sat down, and a crystal pitcher of water with thin lemon slices floating in it. Lemon in the waiting room for a film audition. Taraji sat in the 2nd chair from the door. She had chosen it deliberately, not the 1st chair, too eager, not the last, too passive. 2nd, present, visible, but not desperate. 3 other candidates were in the room. A man in his late 30s in a charcoal suit so crisp it looked like he'd cut the tags that morning. A woman in a burgundy blazer, deeper red than Taraji's, with a leather portfolio and a confidence that filled the room like expensive perfume. And a man named Derek, mid-30s, navy suit, a watch that caught the light, hair slicked back with something that smelled like sandalwood and certainty. All of them were dry, every single one of them, perfectly groomed, not a hair out of place. Not a wrinkle to be seen. They had arrived by car, by rideshare, by lives that included the option of getting from one place to another without drowning along the way. Taraji was still damp. Her blazer had dried enough to pass at a distance, but up close the fabric at her shoulders was noticeably darker. Her shoes were dry. Yes, her documents were dry, absolutely, but her hair was still slightly wet at the nape of her neck, and every few minutes a single drop of cold water ran down her spine. Persistent, quiet, like a reminder of every mile she'd walked. Derek noticed first. He leaned toward the woman in the deeper burgundy blazer, angling his body just slightly away from Taraji, but keeping his voice just loud enough to carry. "Did she swim here?" A covered laugh. Eyes that flicked toward Taraji and away fast enough to pretend they hadn't. Taraji heard it. She felt the words land on her skin the way the rain had. Cold, targeted, designed to soak in. She did not react, not a flinch, not a tightening of her jaw, not a glance in his direction. She simply opened the Ziploc bag on her lap, removed her resume, and began reviewing it. Page by page, line by line, as if the only person in the room was herself. The resume was pristine, crisp white paper, clean ink, not a single wrinkle, not a single drop of water. She had carried it against her chest for 6 miles through a rainstorm wrapped in plastic, shielded by her own body, and it had arrived in better condition than Derek's arrogance. She exhaled, quietly, the smallest release of tension. Then Simone, the receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and reading glasses on a beaded chain, walked toward her carrying a paper cup with a lid. Steam curled from the opening. "Excuse me," Simone said, stopping in front of Taraji. "Someone asked me to give this to you." Taraji looked at the cup, then at Simone. "I'm sorry, who?" "I honestly don't know, hon. I was just told to bring you a coffee. Black." Taraji reached out and took it, her fingers, still cold, still slightly blue at the tips, wrapped around the cup like it was the first warm thing she'd touched in hours. Because it was. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the second word. Not from sadness, from the shock of unexpected kindness in a room where someone had just laughed at her for being wet. Simone smiled, nodded, and walked. Taraji held the coffee with both hands, let the heat move through the paper and into her palms and up her wrists and into the part of her chest where 6 miles of cold had settled like stone. She didn't drink it right away. She just held it, the way you hold something you didn't earn and don't quite understand but desperately need. Derek watched the exchange from 2 chairs over. No one brought him coffee. No one brought anyone else coffee. Just the woman with the damp blazer and the dry resume and the quiet refusal to be broken by a room full of people who had never walked 6 miles for anything. Taraji took her first sip at 9:11. The casting room door opened at 9:15. Her name was called first. The room was smaller than she expected. A rectangular table, 3 chairs on one side, one on the other, hers. A glass of water already poured. A notepad and pen placed neatly beside, as if someone had already decided she might have something worth writing down. On the far side sat 2 people. Beverly Akers, casting director, blonde hair pinned up, glasses, a warm smile that felt rehearsed but not fake. Beside her, Grant Morrison, VP of production, tall, lean, silver at the temples, the kind of man who read every resume with a red pen and believed that doubt was the most useful tool in any hiring decision. Between them sat an empty chair, angled slightly toward the table, as though someone had been sitting there recently and left, or was expected. Taraji noticed it immediately. She didn't ask about it. She sat down, placed her resume on the table, folded her hands in her lap. Her fingers were still cold. She pressed them together to stop the trembling. "Miss Taraji," Beverly began, glancing at the file. "Thank you for coming in, especially given the weather today." "Thank you for having me," Taraji said. Her voice was steady. She had rehearsed this opening 40 times in front of the mirror at home and 30 more times in her head during the walk. "I'm very glad to be here." Standard questions followed. Tell us about your experience. Walk us through your previous work. What's your process for getting into character? How do you handle the pressure of long shoot days? Taraji answered each one carefully. She knew acting, from the inside out, from the years of small roles and unpaid workshop performances and scenes rehearsed alone in a rented room while her son slept. Her answers were solid, not spectacular. Solid. The answers of someone who had done the work but had never had the platform to show it at this level. Grant Morrison wrote notes throughout. Short strokes. He hadn't looked up once. Then he did. Miss Taraji. He set his pen down. Your resume shows a 2-year employment gap, and the role we're casting requires someone who can carry the emotional weight of this character through 90 pages of material. That's not something you can fake. He paused. Let the silence do its work. What makes you believe you can handle that? 6 seconds of silence. Taraji felt it, the familiar pulse of doubt, the voice that said, "You don't belong here. They can see right through you. You walked 6 miles to sit in a chair you haven't earned." 3 seconds. Then she spoke. Mr. Morrison, the character in your script, she wakes up at 4 in the morning because fear wakes her before her alarm does. She takes cold showers because she saves the hot water for her child. She wears a blazer she bought at a thrift store and has dry cleaned twice, spending money she didn't really have. She holds a plastic bag against her chest for 6 miles because the documents inside matter more than the body carrying them. She paused. I know what that is, not because I read it in a script, because I lived it this morning. The room went silent, not the polished professional silence of a scheduled pause, real silence. The kind that settles when something true has been said and no one knows what to say next. Beverly Akers had stopped writing. Her eyes were wide, not with pity, but with recognition. Grant Morrison's red pen was still, his jaw tightened. He didn't nod, he didn't smile, but he didn't argue either. And for Grant Morrison, silence was the closest thing to concession. Taraji exhaled, her hands loosened, the panic receded. Not gone, just quieter, pushed down by something stronger. She was still wet, still cold, still the woman who had walked 6 miles to sit in a chair she wasn't sure she'd earned. But she had answered the question, and the answer had come from a place no training could teach and no resume could capture. Then the door opened. Taraji heard it before she turned. The soft click of a handle, the shift of air pressure as the room changed, footsteps on carpet, measured, unhurried, the kind of walk that owns every room it enters without asking. A man stepped through the doorway, tall, silver-haired, dark suit fitted like it had been sewn onto his body that morning. He carried nothing, no folder, no phone, no coffee, just presence, the kind that makes a room rearrange itself without being asked. Beverly straightened. Mr. Cole, we weren't expecting you. I know, he said. Nothing else. He walked to the empty chair, sat down, unbuttoned his jacket with a single practiced motion, placed his hands flat on the table. Taraji felt her stomach drop. She recognized him. Not from the walk, not from the black Escalade she had never seen. From the lobby, the large photograph behind the reception desk. Silver hair, dark suit. The same face, only now it was 3 feet away, looking directly at her with eyes that gave away absolutely nothing. Raymond Cole, CEO, the name at the top of the building, the top of the letterhead, the top of everything. And he was sitting in the empty chair, watching her. Beverly and Grant exchanged a glance. This was irregular. Raymond Cole did not sit in on mid-level casting sessions. Whatever was happening, it wasn't on the schedule. Raymond studied Taraji for exactly 5 seconds. Her blazer still damp at the shoulders, hair still slightly wet at the edges, hands folded on the table, steady but not quite still, a faint tremor, or cold, or nerves, probably both, but her back was straight. Her eyes were forward. She did not look away. She did not apologize for her appearance. She did not shrink. Miss Taraji, Raymond said. His voice was calm and controlled, the voice of a man who chose every word the way a surgeon chose every cut. I have one question. Taraji swallowed. Yes, sir. Why didn't you reschedule when you saw the weather this morning? The question landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Beverly's breath caught. Grant's pen froze mid-line. Taraji looked at Raymond Cole, at the man who had everything, at the man who had never in his adult life been forced to choose between walking 6 miles in the rain or losing the only chance he'd been given in 14 months. She didn't calculate her answer. She didn't perform it. She just told the truth. Because I've been waiting 14 months for someone to call me back. I've sent over 80 applications. I've been told no more times than I can count. This morning the bus was canceled and I couldn't afford a ride. But I could walk, so I walked. She paused. Her voice didn't waver. I wasn't going to let rain take this away from me. The room was silent, not the polite, professional silence of an interview pause. Real silence, the kind that fills a space when something true has been spoken and no one knows how to follow it. Beverly's eyes were shining. Grant's pen was untouched on the table, and Raymond Cole, the man who had built a company on the belief that words were worthless and only actions mattered, sat perfectly still. Because he wasn't looking at Taraji anymore. He was looking at Dorothea Cole, 23 years old, white shoes by the front door, soles soaking wet, already dry again, already ready for the next shift. His jaw tightened, just once, just enough. The conference room on the 10th floor had a long walnut table, 8 chairs, and a view of downtown Los Angeles that made the city look orderly and manageable from a height where poverty became invisible. Beverly Akers sat at one end, Taraji's file open in front of her. Grant Morrison sat across, arms folded, red pen resting on his notepad like a weapon he hadn't decided to use yet. Raymond stood by the window, hands in his pockets, his back to both of them. "She's underqualified," Grant said first. He didn't waste time. That was both his strength and his limitation. No significant lead credits. 2 years largely out of the industry. Her last work was in a student short. This role needs someone who can carry 90 pages of emotional material. Beverly tapped her pen against the file. Her answers were strong. The response about the character genuine, unrehearsed. She understands this role at an instinctive level that most trained actors take years to develop. Instinct doesn't operate a camera. I need someone who can work with the technical demands, hold performance across long shooting days, handle the pressure of a director who won't be gentle. "You need someone who shows up," Raymond said quietly. Still facing the window, Grant paused. "Sir." Raymond turned around. "You want measurable? Fine." He walked to the table, placed both hands flat on the surface. She walked 6 miles in the rain to get here. She arrived 6 minutes early. Her documents were in perfect condition. She changed her shoes in the restroom. She wrung her blazer out by hand and put it back on. She sat in a waiting room where another candidate mocked her and didn't react. She pulled out her résumé and reviewed it like she was the only person in the room. He looked at Grant steadily. "I'm not hiring her because I feel sorry for her. I'm hiring her because she walked 6 miles in the rain and showed up on time with dry documents. That isn't desperation, Grant. That is professional excellence." Grant's jaw tightened, and if she can't handle the technical demands, if the time away from the industry shows, if her personal situation affects her reliability, then she's done, Raymond said. No hesitation, 90 days, standard terms. Same expectations as every other hire. No special treatment, no lowered bar. If she can't do the job, she goes. Same as everyone else. He paused. "The only difference is that I already know what she's willing to walk through to get here. With most people, I have to guess." Grant crossed his arms slowly. He didn't agree. Not yet. But he didn't argue either. In that room, with that man, silence was permission. Beverly made the call that afternoon. Taraji answered on the second ring. She said nothing for 4 full seconds after hearing the offer. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of 80 applications and 7 auditions that had ended in polite rejection emails, she said, "When do I start?" Taraji started at Riverside Pictures on a Monday. She arrived 40 minutes early. No one had asked her to. The first week was disorientation dressed as orientation. New badge, new desk, new script to memorize, new director to learn, new co-stars to find the rhythm with. The pace was relentless. She made mistakes. Small ones. A scene she didn't hit the right tone on the first day. A timing issue in a key dialogue exchange. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to notice. Enough for the whispers to start. The rumor traveled through Riverside Pictures the way rumors always travel through companies. Fast, distorted, and impossible to trace to a single source. The CEO personally sat in on her casting. Some said it was charity. Some said it was worse. Nobody knew the real details. Everybody had a theory. Taraji felt the stares, in the hallway, in the production meetings, during table reads where her contributions were acknowledged with polite nods but no follow-up. She was the outsider, The anomaly, the woman who had shown up with damp hair on her first day and hadn't explained why. She didn't explain anything, she just worked. By week 3, something shifted. It started with a scene in the second act that the director, Nathan Webb, kept marking as not there yet. The character had to argue before a welfare board, proving not with money but with presence, with love, that she was enough. Webb had shot the equivalent moment 12 times with 3 different actresses during casting. Nothing had landed. On the day he shot it with Taraji, he barely said anything in the preparation. Just think about the real reason you're here. Taraji stood in front of the camera setup, alone under the lights. She didn't think about the character. She thought about Marcus asleep on his side, curled around Biscuit. She thought about the yellow sticky note on the lunchbox. She thought about 6 miles of rain and a scrap of notebook paper in purple crayon, still folded inside. Her left breast pocket, folded along the same creases, never opened differently. Action. What happened in the next 4 minutes was not acting in the way most people study it. It was memory, clean and unmediated, moving through a body that had lived it. Nathan Webb watched the playback twice in the same afternoon. Then he called Raymond. "I found the character," he said. "She's not performing it, she's remembering it." The trouble started 6 weeks after Taraji's probationary period ended. It started the way most trouble does in the entertainment industry. Not with a confrontation, not with a public accusation, but with a conversation that wasn't meant to be overheard. Derek Stafford was a senior producer who had been with Riverside Pictures for 12 years. He oversaw costs and personnel across 3 concurrent productions. He had an office on the 8th floor, numbers that consistently hit their targets, and a reputation for being thorough in ways that made some people respect him and others keep their distance. Derek believed in process, in documentation, in the measurable, verifiable, quantifiable truth of data. He did not believe in exceptions, or in stories, or in hiring decisions made by a CEO who hadn't personally attended a mid-level casting session in 3 years and then suddenly appeared for one. It bothered him, quietly at first, then less quietly. During a routine background audit of new hires, a detail surfaced that he hadn't expected to find. Taraji had been evicted from her previous address 17 months earlier. Her credit score was below 500, outstanding medical debt. A financial history that, when reduced to numbers on a screen, painted that instability Derek felt was something the company had not adequately considered, something the company had not adequately asked. He raised it in a management meeting, not with malice, with precision. "I'm not questioning her on-screen performance," he said, leaning forward at the conference table. "I'm questioning the risk profile. We're trusting a production worth millions of dollars to someone with a documented history of financial instability. How can we rely on someone who couldn't manage her own personal situation?" The room went quiet, not because the question was unfair. It had a logic to it, the kind of logic that looks reasonable on paper and does real damage in practice, the kind that mistakes circumstance for character and poverty for incompetence. Beverly pushed back gently. Taraji's work had been above expectations. Nathan Webb was satisfied. "That's 90 days, Derek said. "I'm talking about the next 90, and the 90 after that. Patterns don't disappear because someone had a good first month." He didn't say it loudly. He didn't need to. In a company of 400 people, a senior producer's doubt travels faster than any memo. 2 weeks later, Taraji noticed the change. Not in the work. The work was the same. Scenes, rehearsals, long shooting days that started before dawn and ended after dark. She was still the first to arrive and among the last to leave. What changed was the air around the work, a silence in the break room when she walked in, a pause in conversation when she approached the coffee machine, eyes that lingered a half second too long on her badge before looking away. She didn't know Derek's name. She didn't know about the meeting. She didn't know that her credit score had been read aloud in a room with glass walls and leather chairs by a man who had never once been evicted from anything. But she knew something had shifted. The way you know rain is coming before the first drop falls. One evening, she sat on the floor of Mrs. Celestine's living room, helping Marcus glue cotton balls onto a paper cloud for a school project. The lamp was warm. Biscuit sat propped against a pillow, supervising. She thought about quitting. The word arrived fully formed, as though it had been waiting. Leave. Find somewhere else. Somewhere no one knows your credit score. Somewhere you don't have to prove you have the right to exist in a building you've helped make better. Mama. Marcus looked up at her, brown eyes holding no knowledge of credit scores or background checks or the weight of being judged by the worst chapter of your life. Do you love your new job? Taraji looked at her son, at the cotton balls, at the paper cloud, at the purple crayon tucked behind Marcus's ear because he always kept one close in case he needed to write something important. I love it, she said, and her voice didn't waver. I love it so much. She put down the phone, picked up the glue, pressed a cotton ball firmly onto the paper cloud, and held it there until it stuck. She wasn't going anywhere. 3 floors above Taraji's dressing room, Raymond Cole read Derek Stafford's email and then closed his laptop without responding. He turned to the window. The city stretched out below, thousands of lives visible only as moving headlights and glowing windows. Somewhere out there, a woman who had walked 6 miles through a November rainstorm was deciding whether to stay at a place where someone had decided her past mattered more than her present. Raymond said nothing, did nothing. Not yet. But his jaw was tight, and his hands resting flat on the desk were not relaxed. Then the break came. Derek made a mistake. He had the conversation in an elevator, with someone he assumed was an ally. That person was Simone, the receptionist on the 3rd floor, the one who had delivered the unexplained cup of coffee on Taraji's first morning. Simone had worked at Riverside Pictures for 11 years. She knew who had ordered that coffee. She had never forgotten it. She sent Raymond an email that night. One line, "You should hear this." Below it, a short audio clip from her phone, recorded in the elevator. Derek's voice, clear and unambiguous. She shouldn't have been brought in at all. Raymond let sentiment override judgment. Next week, I'm going to the board with a formal proposal to revisit the decision before it becomes a liability. Raymond listened to the recording once. The following morning, he and Derek met in Raymond's office. The meeting lasted 18 minutes. No one knew what was said inside. No one needed to. What people saw was this. Derek Stafford submitted his resignation by 3 o'clock that afternoon, citing a new opportunity better aligned with his personal direction. And Raymond Cole, after reading the transcript of what Derek had said in that elevator about a woman whose credit score had been treated as a character verdict, sat alone, in his corner at the scene for a long time. Not because he had won, but because he had just understood something about himself that had taken 20 years and a walk through a rainstorm to arrive at. He had built his entire life's philosophy on the belief that words were worthless, that only behavior told the truth. But he had forgotten that silence is also a behavior. And sitting in a warm car watching a woman walk 6 miles in the rain without stopping to help, that was something he needed to look at directly, without the shelter of a principle to hide behind. 2 years later, Taraji had an office on the 5th floor of Riverside Pictures. Her name was on the door. The office was modest by the building's standards. A desk, a bookshelf, a window facing east. On the bookshelf, between a stack of scripts and a framed photo of Marcus on his first day of 3rd grade, sat a small object that visitors occasionally noticed but never asked about. Biscuit. The stuffed rabbit, ears still limp, fur gone soft and pale from too many washes, placed there by Marcus himself, who declared that Mama's office needed someone to keep her company. Marcus was 15 now. He had his own bedroom in the apartment Taraji rented with her own paycheck. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with real light, a heater that worked, windows that sealed against the wind. Not luxury, laminate floors, outlet store carpet, a used couch that had cost less than a camera lens. But the lock on the door turned from the inside. The lease had her name on it, and nobody could take it away. Marcus had health insurance. Dental, too. He was reading 2 grade levels above his class. He'd joined the school drama club. His latest project, a watercolor of a butterfly, was pinned to the refrigerator with a star-shaped magnet. Taraji had bought a car. A used Honda Civic, 8 years old, with a scratch on the rear bumper she never bothered to fix because it didn't affect the engine, and vanity still ranked below groceries. She drove it to work every morning. 17 minutes, rain or shine. She never walked 6 miles again, but those 6 miles never left her. Raymond Cole had changed, too, though he would never use that word. He would say he had recalibrated, adjusted his methodology based on new data, revised his framework. But the people around him, Beverly, Douglas, even Grant Morrison, saw something different. Not softer, exactly. Wider. Like a wall that had stood too long had grown windows. 8 months after Taraji's first promotion, Raymond stood before the entire Los Angeles staff in the main atrium and announced a new initiative. He called it the 6 Miles Program. No one in the room understood where the name came from. Raymond didn't explain. He read through the details, took questions, and sat down. The program included subsidized transportation for the first 6 months for new hires from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, childcare partnerships with 3 local providers, a 12-month mentorship track pairing new hires with senior staff, résumé workshops, audition coaching, and, most importantly, a hiring pipeline that evaluated candidates based on demonstrated resilience and transferable skills rather than traditional credentials alone. Taraji sat in the 3rd row, hands folded in her lap, eyes straight ahead. She knew exactly where the name came from. Raymond's gaze swept the room and landed on her for exactly 1 second. She nodded. Just once. Just enough. That was all they needed. 2 people who understood the origin of something without having to name it. A shared memory sealed in the space between a rainstorm and a conference room and a cup of coffee that had arrived without explanation. In the small program office on the 2nd floor, mounted near the entrance, was a glass frame. Inside it, folded neatly, tied at the top, was a plastic grocery bag, the ordinary kind, the kind found in any kitchen drawer, in any apartment, in any city. Visitors sometimes glanced at it and assumed it was modern art, a statement piece. Nobody asked what it meant. But if you knew the story, if you knew what that bag had carried, what it had pressed against a chest for 6 miles of rain, what it had protected while the body around it was soaked through, you would understand that it was the most valuable thing in the entire building. Not in dollars, in what it had cost the woman who carried it. In the first year, the 6 Miles program placed 38 single parents in full-time positions across Riverside Pictures and its partner companies. 32 of them were still employed after 12 months. 21 had received at least 1 promotion. 9 had moved into stable housing for the first time in over a year. Numbers on a page, but behind every number was a morning, a decision, a pair of shoes. A stretch of road that someone had chosen to keep walking when every reasonable voice said stop. Raymond Cole had spent his life believing words were air and behavior was truth. The 6 Miles program was not built on words. It was built on a walk, a plastic bag, a woman who showed up soaking wet with dry documents and said, "I wasn't going to let rain take this away from me." And that, Raymond had learned, was worth more than anything he had ever built. 2 years after that walk, Taraji was behind the wheel of her Civic on Vermont Avenue, the very road she knew by heart from her college days, the road that ran east towards smaller buildings and bigger dreams. The sky opened without warning. Not the gentle kind, the other kind, the sudden, furious kind that turns windshield wipers useless and makes street lights blur into smeared ghosts behind walls of water. She was on Vermont Avenue, this road, the exact stretch of road where 2 years earlier she had walked through the rain, sneakers squelching, blazer soaked, pressing a plastic bag to her chest like it was the only thing worth protecting. The heater hummed against her feet. The leather seat was warm at her back. The radio was still set to the station Marcus had chosen that morning. She never changed it. She liked driving through her son's world, then she saw her. On the sidewalk. Moving east, a young woman, mid-20s, dark hair pressed flat against her face, a blazer that didn't fit right at the shoulders, and pressed against her chest, held there with both arms, shielded from the rain by her own body, a plastic bag, knotted at the top, wrapped around something flat. Documents. Taraji's foot moved to the brake before her mind had formed a complete thought. The car slowed. She pulled to the curb, reached across the passenger seat, and pushed the door open. The young woman stopped. She looked at the car, at the open door, at the dry seat, at the woman behind the wheel, whose eyes held something she couldn't name but recognize immediately, as though those eyes had once stood exactly where she was standing. She got in. Taraji pulled back into the lane. The wipers kept their rhythm. The heater wrapped around both of them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the young woman said quietly, as though she wasn't quite sure her voice would work, "I have an audition downtown. I couldn't afford the bus." Taraji nodded. "I know." She didn't explain how she knew. She didn't need to. Some things are understood between people who have carried documents through rain, who have chosen walking over waiting, who have learned that the distance between where you are and where you need to be is measured not in miles but in the willingness to keep moving when every voice says stop. Taraji drove her to the building. She watched the young woman step out, stand straight, smooth the lapels of her blazer, press the plastic bag against her chest, then walk through the front door with her back straight and her eyes level. Taraji sat in the car for a moment after, engine running, wipers clearing the glass. She thought about Raymond Cole, about the black Escalade 2 blocks behind her on a morning just like this one, about a man who watched from his car and didn't stop, who followed instead of helped, who observed instead of offered. She understood now why he had done it. The test, the distance, the need to see what someone does when no one is watching, but she also understood what he had missed, what it had taken him 2 years and a woman walking through a rainstorm to learn. You don't have to test people to see their worth, you just have to stop the car. The distance between where you are and where you belong is not measured in miles. It is measured in the number of people willing to stop and say, "Get in, I see you." Raymond had watched from his car. Taraji had walked through the rain. But in the end, it was Taraji who had taught him the most expensive lesson of his life. Not by walking 6 miles, not by arriving on time, not by keeping her documents dry while her body shook with cold, but by stopping the car. By doing the one thing Raymond had not been able to do on that November morning, by looking at a stranger in the rain and choosing, without hesitation, without calculation, without a single thought about what it might cost or what she might gain, simply to help. That was the lesson. That was the whole story. Not wealth, not power, not the distance between a black Escalade and a pair of soaked sneakers. Just a woman who remembered what it felt like to walk alone in the rain and refused to let anyone else do it.